everyone, I'm Steven Sigmund.
Mike Massinio.
And this is the weekly movie Throwdown, where each week we take two films that have something in common and talk through which one is better. This week, it's a throwdown between Guy on the Phone films, as 2002's Phone Booth takes on The Guilty from 2021. Two big stars here, getting very few steps in their roles in these films. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, and we'll get into that conversation in a few minutes. But before we do, Mike, do you have any wins of the week you want to mention?
This week, no wins of the week. As I realized, I haven't been watching all that much. Been a little busy. I started watching DTF St. Louis because someone recommended it to me, and it's certainly interesting. I don't know if I love it yet. I'm only a couple episodes in,
yeah.
but so I don't really know where it's going. But it is interesting so far.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it. I don't know, a lot of Emmy nominations for HBO this week. I don't know if that was on the list, but it probably was.
It said it was an Emmy nominee. It did say that, but I didn't check which Emmys it was nominated for.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of a fan favorite for a lot of people, it seems. So maybe I've been on the fence about it. I don't know if I'll watch it or not. My win of the week, very excited about this. I saw The Invite last night, the new film from Olivia Wilde. And this was kind of the big success out of Sundance this year. It got into a bidding war. I think A24 ended up paying like in excess of $12 million for it. And there's a lot of hype around it, and it lives up to it. It is really fun. Written by Rashida Jones and Will McCormick. And it's sort of an adaptation of another film from Europe, but it's just beautifully acted. Olivia in particular is sensational in it. I mean, she's really the center of it. Very funny. She's always been really funny, but she really is locked into this character. Seth Rogen is Seth Rogen, but there's not much to talk about with him. You know what you're going to get. Even Ed Norton, whom I'm not a huge fan of, is really kind of charming in this film, and Penelope Cruz as well. It's like a four-hander chamber piece, and really, really funny, and I think well worth going to see if you can see it in a theater.
I've heard Ed Norton called many things, but charming is not one of them. So that is reason alone to want to go see it.
His character's name is Hawk, if that gives you any indication of.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Maybe that's in tribute to Lincoln Hawk from Over the Top, but
I wish it were. I really do. I love Over the Top. We need to get that on the show because, but what do you even compare that to?
Exactly.
There's no other arm wrestling movie.
What's the word? Incomparable. It is an incomparable movie. It stands alone.
Another, for the re-release, there's a blurb, incomparable. But only because there's no other arm wrestling movie.
Yeah, only because no one else would make a movie about arm wrestling. That's just,
maybe we should do like a Robert Loggia Hall of Fame or something, and Over the Top's going to get in there.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. I mentioned that The Invite is a chamber piece, and actually both of these films this week are essentially chamber pieces too, all set basically in one place. So let's get into talking about our matchup for the week. Okay, so this was your pairing. What was it about these two that made you want to put them together and bring them to the show?
Yeah, so besides the obvious that they're movies that take place in one location essentially, but most of the work is done by a single actor who you see, who spends the majority of the movie on screen, but a lot of the other stuff is basically done over the phone, which I just think is kind of fascinating. I know we talk about voiceover work and animation and stuff like that, but in these instances, you just have people over the phone and trying to move the plot with just voices on the other end, I think is interesting. So that was the one part. The other thing that these have in common is that they were both shot in very condensed time frames. That Phone Booth was only shot in 10 days, and there were additional 2 days of coverage. and The Guilty was only shot in 11 days. So, I mean, that was a COVID movie. So, I think it's really interesting to see. It almost made me feel like these were throwback movies back to when they used to film stuff for television in the 50s, essentially, or when you had those live pieces that were done. Very short period of time, actors have to be locked in. You're doing it in real time, shot from beginning to end, I think. I'm not sure if The Guilty was done that way, but Phone Booth was, where it was shot in continuity, so you could just keep it going. So I just think that they were both just really good ways to look at filmmaking in this way and compare them.
Which one do you think is better going into the conversation, or do you not want to tell us?
Going in,
yeah,
yeah, the Guilty was a better movie.
Interesting. Okay. I was not expecting that. I'm going to change your mind, I think, by the end of this.
I would love for you to try to change my mind.
So I had very few thoughts about either of these going into them. I didn't even realize I had seen The Guilty before until like halfway through. And I think that's, like you said, it's a COVID movie. And I think it's kind of like, I keep thinking of Spiderhead, which was an adaptation of a George Saunders story that came out during COVID. And they've all been kind of memory hold, all of these films. And I don't know if The Guilty's been that way, but it is for me. And I just kind of forgot about it. But I really enjoy Phone Booth a lot. And I enjoy The Guilty too. But what I like about both of them together is that in Phone Booth, you have all of the action happening around the main character. Whereas with The Guilty, it's almost like Jake Gyllenhaal is the Kiefer Sutherland character, and all the action is on the other end of the phone. So it's more like a movie versus a radio play or something. And I find that super interesting as a comparison, because I also thought a lot about, like, if you're hearing impaired and you went to see both of these films, like, you would have a much better time with Phone Booth because you're seeing everything unfold.
That's true.
And so in getting into a conversation about these, I think that's a really interesting way to look at how they're executed and how well they're executed, because it seems to me that it's a lot harder to do when, even though that's like the way it's been since radio happened, you're hearing the action, but I found a little bit of a harder time believing all of the action I was listening to versus what I was seeing. So that's kind of tipping my hand. But the, Phone Booth for me going in is the one that I feel is like the stronger of the two.
That's an interesting point that you make about that. And that may be why I thought The Guilty worked better. I think The Guilty really depends on how you feel about the voice actors on the other side of the phone. And some of the voices are recognizable, some of them aren't. I mean, obviously, Kiefer Sutherland's an incredibly recognizable voice, and I'm sure that you read that he wasn't originally the actor that was cast.
I didn't.
Ron Eldard was actually
really
hired, and he recorded a lot of the voiceover on the phone, and they decided that he just didn't have what they were looking for, and they cast Kiefer Sutherland after the fact.
Wow.
Yeah, which turns out to be a really good choice.
Yeah.
So obviously Kiefer Sutherland just has one of the most wonderful distinctive voices, and it's great. But yeah, in The Guilty, you're relying on a bunch of other people essentially doing voice actor work to try to keep you in the movie and keep you in suspense. And I guess how you feel about that is really how you feel about the movie.
Yeah. Let's talk about Phone Booth first, because it came out in 2002, and I think I can't remember another film prior to this that was a premise. I'm sure there are many of them, but I can't think of any where someone's like stuck in a spot.
Well, here is something great for you, which you may not know as well. So the guy that wrote it, Larry Cohen?
Larry Cohen.
Mm-hmm. Larry Cohen's his name. So he had worked with Hitchcock. Larry Cohen's very old.
Way back.
Let's put it this way. He's an old guy. So he talked with Hitchcock. He pitched this idea to Hitchcock back in the 60s. The idea of making a movie where someone was confined to like a phone booth, to a confined space. And Hitchcock really liked the idea, which I could imagine he absolutely would, but he couldn't solve the problem of what would keep the person in the phone booth.
Mm.
And he asked Larry Cohen to try to figure it out and they can make the movie. But he didn't in the time that he worked with Hitchcock. They couldn't really figure out how to solve the problem of what would keep him in the phone booth. It took him until years later to figure out, okay, if there's a sniper or something on him, forcing him to stay in the confined space, that's how we keep him there. And then he wrote the script. But when I read that, it made perfect sense to me because phone booth feels a lot to me like a movie written by an old person trying to be a young person. Like I felt it, honestly. And when I saw who wrote it, I was not surprised. Does that make sense? And this,
It does.
and let me just be clear. This is a guy who wrote episodes of Columbo. So he already has my respect.
Yeah.
So no shade there, but it really did feel like maybe he was 10 years past his prime in writing the script.
Yeah, he feels like a second tier guy to me, and I don't say that in a way that's like derogatory, but he had sort of a stint in horror for like the 70s and 80s, and the stuff he made is kind of legendary, but it's also legendary for being sort of a like a knockoff of something better. For instance, he did The Stuff, which is obviously like a take on The Blob, sort of a lesser version of that. He did It's Alive, which feels so almost like a sequel to Rosemary's Baby in a way. And the one thing that he did sort of innovate with is Maniac Cop, which is something that horror heads really love. And actually is being remade right now by Nicholas Winding Refn, of all people. So there's a little bit of like pedigree with that. But yeah, Larry Cohen is an interesting character. Similar to this, he wrote Cellular with Kim Basinger, which I think is maybe another one we could have compared to Phone Booth in a way.
I didn't know that.
The thing I really want to point out is that when we did our Bringing Out the Dead versus Ambulance Throwdown a few weeks ago, I mentioned a movie called The Ambulance from 1990 that starred Eric Roberts and Red Buttons, and he wrote that.
That's
what a crazy coincidence.
Another thing that's fun is that Michael Bay was one of the directors considered to do Phone Booth. And in the interview, the first thing he said was, how do we get this guy out of the phone booth? And they just moved on from him immediately, which I kind of love. Like, I love the idea that Michael Bay walked in and was like, I don't like anything about this premise. Let's just change it immediately. Anyway.
That's interesting. I see, before you told me that part of it, I thought Michael Bay would be great for this.
Yeah, that's what they thought until he was like, yeah, I need to be in a car moving around. He cannot possibly move the camera. How many times can you move the camera up and down around a phone booth? I mean, he needs more than that. He's Michael Bay, for God's sakes. You can't,
Well, this is 2002, and it has sort of what, actually more of a Tony Scott opening than Michael Bay, but it does feel a little Bay-like especially after the whole thing of the satellite, and which is very similar to 2001's The Fast and the Furious and the NOS.
Enemy of the State starts in a similar way, if you remember.
Right.
So a lot of that going on this period of time, maybe because they had the technology to do it, so everybody was trying to do it. But I will say, too, about the beginning, that's the good example of what I said about like an old man writing a young man movie. Like, it just felt like an old man explaining to you how telephones work for like the first 3 minutes. It's like, God damn it, we know how telephones work. I don't need you to explain this to me. It's like in this square block, it's like with the people use cell phones now, but calm down. I understand, okay?
Yeah, we need none of that information for him to go to a phone booth. Like,
honestly, who was the voiceover? Because it wasn't at the end. The voiceover talking about phones is Kiefer Sutherland, but the beginning voiceover, I don't even know whose voice that is. It's some random omniscient narrator. I don't even know who the hell that's supposed to be.
It really serves zero purpose to the story, I guess, other than the fact that the Stu character played by Colin Farrell has to go analog to do the things in secret that he wants to do. He could also just delete his call log from his cell phone. He has an assistant who has like 10 phones. Why doesn't he just use one of those other phones to call Katie Holmes? He doesn't need like his personal phone that his wife, played by Rhoda Mitchell, is going to check. Like, there are a lot of plot holes in the lead up to get to the phone booth in this. And we should say that this guy, played by Colin Farrell, his name is Stu, he's sort of a slimy PR guy. And his big thing is that he gets he gets What's Up magazine to offer Donnie G a photo. Like, these are things that an old man would write, I think, because they're not based in reality. One of his clients is named Big Q, played uncredited by Ben Foster, which I thought was a nice touch. But ultimately, he's like your stereotypical publicist. And it turns out he's sort of like has a lot of false bravado because he's very insecure. He's very like not really at a level that you think he's at when you see him. And that's sort of what Kiefer Sutherland brings out of him. Kiefer Sutherland is a sniper, basically, who I would argue in a dark way is the hero of this film by unlocking Colin Farrell to be an honest and good person in a way.
Well, you know what it reminded me of? Just a really long version of that one scene in Fight Club where he takes the convenience store guy and brings him out back.
Yes.
And threatens to kill him if he doesn't enroll in school. Like, it felt like just as a much longer version of that one thing.
That Raymond guy K. Hessel was that character's name.
He would definitely be. Oh, that's right. But yeah, the sniper would definitely be a member of Fight Club. There's no doubt about
it. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I think Colin Farrell in this is excellent for what he's given. And I do think it's a sharp premise, maybe executed not perfectly, but I think he does an incredible job of tapping into like almost different personalities by the end. And I really can't think of another person I would imagine in that role who would do as good of a job necessarily. What do you think about his performance?
Yeah, this was that period of time where Colin Farrell was really on the come up, where he was doing a lot of work and getting recognized for being able to do accents and just a lot of strong work. I think his Bronx accent is not 100% great.
Yeah,
but it's good. It's good enough. It's good enough. It didn't really. It wasn't distracting to me. We'll put it that way. So it was good, and he was really strong. I mean, it takes a lot for an actor to have to carry an entire movie on screen. It's you have to appreciate just the lift that is, and especially the fact that shooting it in 10 days, the fact that you're shooting it in continuity. So it's a lot to take on. So here's which kind of leads me to how I feel about phone booth in general. I was thinking about this, and I have to say that I love the idea of phone booth as a filmmaking exercise. I watched like some making of documentaries about it, and those are fascinating. I love watching how they turned LA into New York, how they were able to deal with the sunlight issues to keep the continuity correct, all the little things of having to keep them in the phone booth and all the technical aspects of it. I think is an amazing feat of filmmaking. I really do. And I think the performance by Colin Farrell is great. I just don't know how much I love it as an actual movie that I watched. Like, I almost love it more as a premise than as an actual movie. If that makes sense.
It does. And I think the script has a lot to do with that. And but not taking away from the script either, because I think it's still pretty strong, even though perhaps it feels like the criticism that people have of Disclosure Day a little bit, where it's like an old man trying to be contemporary. But it's still, I found it to be pretty strong for the most part. You can tell it's an older man who wrote it because the women are basically non-existent and almost like have zero depth to their characters. And do
we want to spend a minute on this now? I found that the prostitute subplot to be one of it's one of the worst. It's really not good. Like, I've never actually rooted so hard for a sniper to start shooting people in a movie. I felt like, can we just eliminate all of these people immediately? Like, I need this to be over. It was painful. I mean, those actors did their best
Yeah.
with some work that just did not give them credit at all.
I think there's a better way to draw attention to him in the phone booth, and that certainly is like a ham-fisted pass on it.
Yeah.
And I also think perhaps I know that the crux of the film is these two women and like his dilemma of revealing his intentions, but that could have almost been like put Ben Foster's Big Q character as the guy who hires Kiefer Sutherland. Like, you don't need those women in such a poorly drawn way to be like the crux of the film. There are better ways to go about it where they're not. I mean, I feel like they're disrespected and have zero to do.
100%. Like those roles are thankless roles, and it feels like this is what he imagined ladies of the night to be like in the 50s and 60s, and that is essentially how he wrote this. It's like, good God, man.
Yeah, they're just cartoons, basically. I mean, the prostitutes are cartoons, and the women who are like the proper women are just treated like they're invisible, and it's really not good. See, this is great because I had all of these ideas about phone booth going in, and now we're talking through it. And this is why we say it at the beginning, because you might sway me with this examination. I don't know. I don't know. It's funny because despite all of that, I still really enjoyed this, and I think it's because I was seeing it on screen versus listening to it unfolding, and that's something we'll talk about a little more with the guilty. But here, I just found it, despite all of those flaws, really compelling to watch, and also very dated. I loved seeing things like the net zero billboard and like just all of the things that were of 2002. That was kind of a nice throwback. That also kind of dates the film, you know?
Yeah, seeing all the flip phones is definitely fun as a throwback, but very much dates the movie. Even the fact that there's a phone booth actually dates the movie. But
yeah. Why didn't the pimp just have a cell phone? Like, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Perhaps for security?
Yeah, now that you bring it up, we go through this long old man explanation at the beginning that explains that phone booth is going to be disconnected the following day.
Yeah.
And that he's going to be the last person on it. So why are they so obsessed with the phone booth? They need to move on from it anyway.
Yeah, they should have planned ahead. Unless they didn't know, you know, and maybe they just show up the next day and it's not there, and they go hunt down the Bell Atlantic guys
also,
or something.
if he owns the strip club, couldn't they just use the phone in there?
I suppose there's some sort of anonymity to the payphone, I guess. But yeah, I mean,
That's fair.
You know, that train's coming, so the next day you're going to have to figure something out anyway. That's a good point. Again, another flaw in this goddamn script that I was so into before we started the show.
I want a postscript. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter anymore because their boss is dead. So I guess they got a lot more problems than a missing phone booth next day. That's fair. All right, so we're not going to get into that.
That brings me to another point in some sort of like continuity issue that I find with this. One of the things that Kiefer Sutherland talks about in the beginning is that when he shoots somebody, there's going to be a grapefruit-sized hole in that person because of the high-powered rifle he's using. Now, if Colin Farrell had a handgun and shot this pimp, I don't imagine the exit wound would be a grapefruit-sized hole. So wouldn't the police or these prostitutes have seen a grapefruit-sized hole in this man and understood that Colin Farrell could not have done it?
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
that thinking too much?
Of course. It just seemed like they wanted to blame him, so I'm almost willing to let that go. Obviously, they're the ones that called the cops. But here, I'll give you one better. If the gun creates a grapefruit-sized hole, how was he able to just graze Colin Farrell's ear with that bullet.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is
Wouldn't it have blown his
precise.
entire neck off? Like that would have been. But again, it's fine. It's fine. We're going to let all this go. We're on the ride in the movie. It's fine.
And why did Colin Farrell not stand up after that and raise his fist in defiance? That's what I'd like to know. The next day, he has a giant bandage on his ear, I'm sure. Well, I mean, he probably would, but it's, yeah, I did not expect to come into this and just pick this film apart, because I really think in the brief amount of time, it's like 82 minutes, it does a good job of building tension and creating a scenario that you're invested in.
It does. And that's the thing. You're not wrong that, because it doesn't overstay its welcome, it kind of gets in and it gets out, that when you're watching it, you're not necessarily picking it all apart. I mean, that's my nature. I can't really help it. Like the minute it started the way that it did, like I just kind of like,
Yeah.
my mind just switched to watching it in that way.
Yeah.
Because as I find these things funny, so I can't help myself. But looking at it objectively, it's true. It gets in, it gives you this premise, it's out really fast. So you don't really have to dwell on it for too long. But I do think it was a 45-minute movie stretched into 80 minutes.
Yeah, and I think that has something to do with the women. Like the minimal amount of time they're given, it's almost like insulting to them. They could have just gotten rid of it and turned it into a shorter film.
And that's the other part too, where he explains the first two people that he shot. And one of them was a pedophile and one of them was essentially a money laundering criminal. What exactly is Stu's great crime that he would bring him through this same thing? It just feels like the punishment in this instance doesn't necessarily fit the crime, unless he decided that those people were just too terrible and he couldn't change them. So he decided to take a step down. If maybe his goal is to just make people better, so he decided to take a step down to lower level people and then hoping he can change them as opposed to those other people who were impossible to change. Am I giving too much credit to this script? I don't know. I'm not really sure.
I guess the question is, do you think his intention was to ever let Stu go, or was he just going to kill him? I mean, basically,
it seems like it is, because the end kind of indicates that he's glad that he had a change of heart and he'll be watching him to make sure that he sticks to his word. So
that's true.
Is it more like he's just an avenging angel, so to speak? Did he only kill those guys because they refused to admit that they had done anything wrong?
Yeah, I guess so. It's interesting. This is directed by Joel Schumacher, and earlier this week I watched Falling Down, which he also directed, from 1993. And the Kiefer Sutherland character, now that I'm thinking about it, feels a little bit like an extension of that defense character from Falling Down, who is not only responding in the moment to injustices against him, but is trying to like actively erase those injustices from the world. So yeah, the more of a vigilante, I think, than defense is in Falling Down, but kind of in the same mindset in a way of like the world is messed up and things just need to be a little better. Like an incel, basically. I mean, one of the things that I had to review Falling Down, and one of the things in the review is like, he's such an outlier then, and he would just be, these days he would just be on like Reddit, or finding a chat room with a bunch of like-minded people and they're all doing the same thing. So it feels like Kiefer Sutherland's character could be somebody who read defense's posts on Reddit and decided to be activated and like go do something like that. But it's an interesting thread through Joel Schumacher's films, and maybe it just ends here, but because it's fresh in my mind, it feels like a good comparison. Yeah, I mean, speaking of Joel Schumacher, to me, he's kind of like a middle of the road, like good director who, hits a home run every now and then, but he's like I don't know, like a 250 batter to me. What do you think about him? I mean,
100%.
Batman aside.
I mean, obviously I can never forgive Batman and Robin. I just can't. I can never forgive him for that. It's just too hard for me. But trying really hard to put that aside. I mean, he is. You have to give Joel Schumacher credit for taking swings. I mean, if you look at his filmography, he and he even said this. The reason he took Phone Booth is because he took it as a challenge to try to see if he can do this movie in this short period of time. And you can't say that he didn't challenge himself as a director. He took on lots of different genres, made lots of different movies, and you can see he's having a good time with them. They don't always work though. I mean, he did Time to Kill, which I think is great. He made The Lost Boys, of course, which is, I mean, you cannot love that movie. So he's really hit some out of the park. But yeah, he's got a bunch of middling movies in between and made possibly the worst superhero movie of all time. So it's really a huge. He's got a huge swing. He's got a huge pendulum here from good to bad.
Yeah. He also made 8mm, which I don't know if you saw that, but
which is crazy that he made 8mm the movie after Batman and Robin. So he made one of the gaudiest, most ridiculous spectacles ever, and then made one of the darkest, most uncomfortable movies. I actually despised 8mm. I thought that movie was just really hard to watch. I know some people like that kind of stuff. You and I have talked about this before, where that kind of movie is not my wheelhouse. And it just felt like Seven with no, I don't know. It just felt like Seven without any redeeming qualities in it whatsoever. It just felt like a step below that. I guess what it wanted to be, written by the same person, but it just felt like even more nihilistic, and I couldn't deal with it. But I think that's a great example of him. It's fascinating that that one director could make both of those movies.
I mean, points for casting Nicolas Cage, though, because who better to live in that dark world than Nicolas Cage, right? So that's something, at least.
By the way, this all ties together in some way, because speaking of Nicolas Cage, I'm actually watching Spider Noir on Amazon.
Yeah, how is it?
Which I'm not necessarily sure is good, but he, I feel like, watching him try to be like a 1920s guy, he's got that voice, like that 1920s New York voice that he uses in Spider Noir. And that's how I imagine how Larry Cohen thinks that people speak. That's just how I see him writing people. So that's my connection between those things. Let's put it
yeah, that's interesting. Maybe Colin Farrell should have. Well, I guess Kiefer Sutherland is the voiceover ultimately in this, but yeah, and true. Then that guy at the beginning, whoever he is. So that makes sense. Like there is an element of that, at least that setup of the noir film there with it almost feels like, I don't know if he wrote on Dragnet or not, but it feels like the opening of Dragnet when Joe Friday is talking about, I carry a badge. And so, boy, we are really going back on on this one.
We are as old as Larry Cohen, apparently. That's
in spirit, at least.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you want to mention anything else about this? I mean, I feel like since the film doesn't give any due to the women, maybe we should a little bit, because it's early for Katie Holmes outside of Dawson's Creek in her film career, and I remember it kind of being a big deal, that she was in this. Not a thankful role, but it. What did you think of her and Radha Mitchell? Were there just sort of window dressing?
Yeah, ultimately? Again, pretty thankless roles. But yeah, again, this was, I mean, Katie Holmes, because of Dawson's Creek, was just hugely popular, and this is her starting to come out. And we kind of forget that there was a run in her career where she did. I mean, she was working quite a bit. She was really taking some diverse movie roles and trying to branch out. Won't really want to discuss how things go sideways, but I mean, Wonder Boys and The Gift, and she was in The Singing Detective. She did a bunch of stuff around there. She did First Daughter. So, so she was really exploring, what she could do until her career went a different path, I guess you could say. But I thought she was perfectly fine. I mean, she's good as an object of desire because she was America's sweetheart at the time. I mean, it makes perfect sense. So, Radha Mitchell honestly is not given much to do. I can't lie.
It's frustrating. She's such a good actress, and I just ordered. Criterion is releasing High Art. Have you ever seen that film with her and Ali Sheedy? The Lisa Cholodenko film from '97-ish. It's a very independent, but she's the lead in it, and she's so compelling. She's such a good actress. And to see her in this, I mean, maybe it's like a paycheck thing, I don't know, but it just completely underutilized here. I think
I
there
mean, let's
could have
put
been
it
a
this
lot more
way.
for her to do.
Yeah, I think it's better to speak about how Radha Mitchell and Katie Holmes are underutilized than to look at the largest female part that Paula Jai Parker played. Right? I think I'd rather be them than her in this movie. Because
Yeah.
the part where
Yeah.
the female given the most to do, yeah, that wasn't great. So maybe it was better to just hang back in the
Yeah.
cut and let the movie unfold around you.
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point. Again, like you don't want Larry Cohen to notice you
Right.
if you're a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. All of the things we've said aside, I still found this super entertaining and kind of fun. I mean, all of its flaws, it's something I would probably return to because it's nostalgic in a way. It has like the feeling of the 2000s and forgot to mention the picture in picture stuff, which I thought was an interesting way
Yes.
to convey who's on the other end of the line, but it became super distracting after a while, and they started using it for like shots around the same scene in the by the phone booth, and they took something that could have been an interesting device and just leaned way too far into it. That kind of killed it for me. But again, still a fun movie, because it was unique at the time
Yeah.
for me.
And again, as we've said, there are movies that can be bad and good at the same time. I mean, I enjoyed laughing at parts of this movie. It's not necessarily terrible. I'll give you an example. So a couple of days ago, actually, I was just sitting around trying to find something to watch, and I stumbled on the Masters of the Universe, the original Masters of the Universe, and thought, well, I haven't seen this movie since I was a kid.
Dolph
So maybe I give it a
Lundgren?
shot. The Dolph Lundgren version. I got through 10 minutes of it and thought, this is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my whole life. And I had to turn it off. And I switched
Yeah.
to Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which was also a terrible movie. But Bloodsport was a terrible movie that is enjoyable to watch because you can have fun at the terribleness of Bloodsport. Where Masters of the Universe, you couldn't even enjoy the badness. It was just terrible. And so Phone Booth definitely leans more into Bloodsport, where it's a movie you can enjoy, even if you think it's not very good. You could have fun with it. Because there are enough fun things in it. And even the things that are bad, you can laugh at and enjoy.
Yeah. I
How's
agree
that?
completely.
How's that
Beautiful.
for the blurb? You can laugh at it. There you go. That's my blurb for the movie.
a drama you can laugh at.
Yeah.
All right. With that ringing endorsement, why don't we move on to talking about The Guilty? So as we mentioned, this is a COVID film from 2021. It's directed by Antoine Fuqua, who we've talked about on the show before. He's fascinating to me, but we'll get into him a little bit later. It's written by Nick Pizzolatto, who is best known for writing True Detective, and it's adapted from a Danish film that was written by Gustav Mahler, Emil Nygaard Albertsen, and it's kind of a run of films from overseas that are being Americanized basically around this time. And this is a guy on a phone listening to the action happening. As I mentioned earlier, it throws it on its ear. And basically he's a demoted police officer who's assigned to desk duty in a way and works at the 911 call center. He's possibly guilty of a crime. We don't know what it is, but it seems to be weighing on him when it's established that he's going to court the next day to be tried for whatever crimes he committed. And he comes across a phone call in the 911 shift where he sort of has to step up and get involved in it, basically. So you mentioned that you liked this one better. What was it about it that
Yeah, and
did
you have
that.
to mention, like, as the movie unfolds, we start to understand why he becomes obsessed with trying to help this woman and what it means in the bigger picture. I just think it's a bit of a slow burn that it's a slow burn character piece where, unlike Phone Booth, which is very much just like a very simple premise, kind of dragged out for maximum tension, which I don't necessarily know if it sustains for the entire time. You have to take a few flights of fancy to kind of keep that going. Where there are multiple times he should just be shot and it should be over, and he doesn't shoot him. So that's fine. Where this one, also a very short movie, but I don't feel like the time is wasted. I think it's a bit of a slow burn, and you know, he becomes obsessed with trying to help this woman who he thinks has been kidnapped, and is following her on the phone and trying to get other people to step in and help. And so, you know, you're as in the dark as he is, and it's unfolding to him and you at the same time. So as you're trying to piece together what's actually happening in this story, you're also trying to piece together what it is about it that he can't let go and why. And as it goes on, you get the reveal of you know, what his obsession is and what it means in the bigger picture, because you're also wondering what's this thing hanging over his head. I just think it's a nice, it's a short movie that really works. I don't think anything in the movie is extraneous, if that makes sense, and that's why I think it works. So you could feel differently about the fact that most of the stuff is done over the phone, but I enjoy good voiceover work. That if you can keep my interest with just your voice, I think that's really hard to do. And so I was intrigued by the people on the other end and how that unfolded. But I really do think that the story unfolded in the time it needed without really feeling dragged out. And that's why I think it worked.
Right. Yeah, I liked it. Um, I think where you land with it depends on your mileage with late stage Jake Gyllenhaal, because he's somebody who kind of is going the Nicolas Cage route, and he explodes quite a bit in this film. And there's something off-putting about him for me. I mean, we saw it a little bit in Ambulance too. He does what Nicolas Cage does, but in not in like such a charming way, I think is maybe the best way to put it. At least is how I see it. And I, I agree that the storytelling on the other end of the phone, causing you to listen more than watch, is super compelling. I have this thing in my head where I can never separate the vision of actors sitting in a sound booth recording their lines versus like putting them in the place of the story. And I don't know what that is about me, but maybe it's because uh, voice acting is a different animal than screen acting. And if you're a great screen actor, you might not necessarily be a great voice actor. And some of the people involved in this do better than others. And I think that kind of like throws me off a little bit because of that, that like I just pick up on it and it's a little less believable in some instances.
No,
But
that's totally fair.
it does create a compelling story. I find some of the things, and I haven't seen the original, so I don't know if what is a part of that story versus what Nick Pizzolatto put into it. But there are some things that feel like not just convenient, but almost like shrouded in mystery for the sake of bringing the film to the reveal at the like the big reveal of who's to blame for everything that happened. And because of that, I just found myself thinking about this a lot more than I did Phone Booth while I was watching it. And perhaps it's because I'm having to listen. And if I'm listening, I'm sort of processing it differently. I don't know. I'm just thinking about that right now, but
Yeah,
could be.
I actually love that you're looking at it in that way, and it's true. The fact that you're hearing it may cause you to stop and actually think about it. And you're right that it really hinges on the reveal of the story and how believable you think that is, because that's really what the whole movie builds to. It's suspense to a point that you find that it turns on its head. Um, it worked for me. It was fine. I was mildly surprised, so it worked pretty well for me, I'll say. Um, I was going to say, as far as Jake Gyllenhaal goes, that's why I think this works too, because I think that everyone's got a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Jake Gyllenhaal, and in this
Yeah.
one, he never really, like, he's not really supposed to be likable, and from the outset, you feel like he's got a bit of an edge to him. You just don't know why, and then at the end, you're like, oh, I wasn't supposed to like him anyway. Like, I get it. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
So, I guess that works in that regard. That he's always got that thing about him. I will say though, I watched the movie Everest for the first time last week. I didn't mention this on my wins of the week, but I watched it like last week, and I didn't even realize that Jake Gyllenhaal was in that movie.
I didn't
And
either.
he plays a really good character. He plays another climber that has a group that he's bringing up to the top of Everest, but he just plays like this really laid back climber dude, and I forgot like that Jake Gyllenhaal, the kind of laid back,
Yeah.
easygoing Jake Gyllenhaal, not the late stage Jake Gyllenhaal who never smiles and is punishing himself all the time, like that kind of thing. So yeah, it was nice to throw back and see old school Jake Gyllenhaal.
I'm wondering if there's a moment in his career that turned him from that Jake Gyllenhaal to what we see in this film, because it hasn't always been that way. I think maybe I don't know. I'm looking over his filmography, and perhaps it actually always was that way, and it just has gotten amped up a little bit. I mean, you go as far back as Zodiac, and he's fairly contained in that. That's 2007, but even something like Love and Other Drugs, which is 2010, he's a little over the top, playing this charming drug rep. So I don't know, maybe something unlocked it, because, prior to that, I don't think of him as somebody who, I forget what film I was listening to a podcast about, but they said that he held up production because it was on a beach. Maybe it was Roadhouse, and he just had to go in the water and like stopped production because it was on a beach. And the director was like, "Well, what are you doing?" And he said something like, "When I see the ocean, I have to get in the ocean." And it cost like a day of like budget money. So like that kind of thing, I don't know. I mean, it's all speculation, but it seems like sometime along the way he became that guy. And for better or worse, because I think it works sometimes. It worked great in Ambulance, which we covered a few weeks ago, but here I don't know. I don't know if it does or not. But, that being said, he does a hell of a lot of heavy lifting in this film. He doesn't have all that action around him. He's really the only one on screen, and that's a big lift. And even though he's over the top a lot of the time with it, it's still commendable. And I think, given those circumstances, I can look past some of the bigger moments that I don't think necessarily need to be there, but were like his in the moment reactions, and say that it's an incredible performance.
Yeah. I fall
Okay.
into I kind of like Jake Gyllenhaal camp, so I'm more forgiving of him than you are. It just hit me that I realized he's acting in this movie with his brother-in-law too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Peter Skarsgård is one of the voices on the phone, so I didn't realize that till just now. But Divine Joy Randolph is really good as the dispatcher that's talking to him. She had a couple of good moments. And of course, Ethan Hawke plays the captain that he calls, which I didn't recognize at first. At the very first, I didn't recognize him, and then the second phone call, it finally clicked for me who it was.
But when like it's so
Right.
obvious because he's Ethan Hawke. Like he's just Ethan Hawke. And that's a great example of people who I think the voice acting is strong for. Ethan Hawke is just like, I think his brand of acting carries over because he's just like laid back guy. He's totally chill. Divine Joy Randolph is fantastic. And Peter Sarsgaard in particular, I think, does an incredible job, especially toward the end of the film. I don't think that the lines he's given are necessarily great, but his performance really translates well over the phone to me. And that really locked me in. I think Riley Keough, who plays Emily, not as good. And I think some of the things that she's given, like some of that convenient dialogue that helps to mask the big twist at the end, sort of fails her. But I don't buy her as much as a character I'm not looking at as I do Peter Sarsgaard in particular, because I think he's fantastic. And maybe it's like a theater thing. I don't know. Like theater, same with Ethan Hawke. You're projecting in a different way. You're delivering lines in a different way. But those two really did it for me. And Riley Keough, while I thought she was fine, she kind of took me out of it a little bit with her, like her demeanor as Emily. I don't know. What did you think of her?
I thought it was fine. I didn't really overthink it. I thought she was effective enough in getting across what was happening. Yeah, it wasn't 100% believable at first. I think it actually improved a little as it went on. At the beginning, I was a little put off by it, to be honest. But
Yeah.
I feel like she got better as the phone calls went on. That's the way I felt about it.
Yeah, maybe the more she got to flesh out being in that moment with the character, it got a little more natural for her. But the stuff with the original phone call where she just kept repeating like whatever she was repeating, I don't know, that stuff really kind of got to me and took me out of it a little bit. But again, I think that's in the writing, and I don't know if that's in the writing of the original film. I wish I had watched that so I have a better comparison between the scripts. But what there is in this that I know is different from the Danish version is that there's no admission of guilt until the courtroom scene the next day. And whereas in this, Jake Gyllenhaal, Joe, tells his partner Rick to just like go with his conscience the next day. There's none of that. And Rick basically finds out in the courtroom, what is the what. And so it's a totally different perspective on it. But here, I guess,
you know what?
because it's a COVID film and you have that
right.
one scene.
Yeah, I think that because of the COVID, you got to keep it contained in one place, and so they couldn't have the courtroom scene. So I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think you need the big courtroom reveal scene. The only courtroom reveal scenes you need involve Al Pacino. Nothing else. Everybody else is not necessary. We only need that one. So yeah. So I thought that was fine. I will say though, in watching this, it definitely feels like a Nick Pizzolatto thing, because unlike Phone Booth, which can be fun in certain moments, you can laugh at it. I mean, Nick Pizzolatto, there's no joy. It's just misery all the way down.
Yeah.
So that's how he rolls.
It's very bleak.
Yeah. He's got a bleak outlook on things.
I will say if there were a courtroom scene in this, Jake Gyllenhaal might give an Al Pacino-esque performance. So we could be missing out on that. That's something.
It's tough.
Yeah, you're right. The Nick Pizzolatto of it is kind of bleak and dark, and you almost feel like True Detective in this in a way with some of the things that are happening on the other end. And I don't know what that's about. I mean, I guess that's just his writing style. But here, it gets surprisingly dark, and that also really almost kind of pulls me out of it a little bit. I wonder if it had to be that dark. But I don't know. I guess it works too. It's just when we talk about Larry Cohen's script, I talk about this one in the same way, where it feels like some of the things are from a perspective of someone who's just so dark that I don't know that they need to, like, they're necessarily a good overlay for this story. And, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, I just found this to be like a super bleak film that I just was in my head about a little more because, I watched this, not to get off on a tangent, but I watched this great interview with Rick Rubin and the author Dave Eggers. And Dave Eggers said that reading is the most interactive art form because you're the narrator, you're the cinematographer, you're the actors. And I thought about that a lot when I was watching this, because that's what I'm doing when I'm listening to all of the action unfolding on the phone. So that made me think more, and thinking more about it sort of made the cracks show a little more, I guess. I don't know. But I still enjoyed it.
No,
I think it's
that
fun.
makes sense. I think that's fair. I think that both of these movies, in their own ways, have certain flaws that you have to accept or overlook to really enjoy the movie, and that's true. I mean, that neither one of these were huge hits, and I think that's why they're both watchable movies. They're both good in their own way. But yeah, one of them is a bit silly, and one of them is pretty damn bleak. So depending on your mileage on those things, you'll like one more than the other.
I did really sympathize with Joe in a lot of ways. Number one, I have asthma, so I always have an albuterol inhaler with me. So I totally like related to him in that way. But the he must have felt so helpless in his limitation of being locked in this room and only being able to call out to other people. And it's interesting because this is all done by phone, but there've been a lot of films recently, like Unfriended and I think Searching is another one, that are all kind of set on a computer, where one person's sitting at a computer and they have to find somebody or like prevent a murder or something through, like scanning social media, going back through Ring camera footage, whatever. So it's a really interesting idea to lock someone in a room and give them like limited technology with which they can solve a crime or something. So I really kind of love that. And I don't know, I'm just thinking about the stress of that, like having all of these resources, but still being limited by being in that room. So that creates a lot of tension here that I think is very effective, as effective in a way as Colin Farrell being trapped in a phone booth with everything unfolding around him. So that is kind of a good segue into comparing the two. Did you have anything else you wanted to mention about The Guilty before we move on to the head?
No, not at all. I don't know if we mentioned the fact that they're both real-time movies as well, which we failed to mention, which is also what they have in common.
I think it's interesting because, and again, maybe this is like the cerebral part of imagining the action happening, but The Guilty is maybe 10 minutes longer than Phone Booth, but to me, it felt like another half hour. It just felt a lot longer, a lot more drawn out. Maybe because you're so locked into like one room and there's not a lot of action happening around you. But did you find that it felt a little longer, or was it as breezy as Phone Booth for you?
I because it was so dark, it felt a little long. But again, I think it was breezier than Phone Booth, just because I was more. The way the story unfolded was better in terms of the story was meaty enough to carry the movie. Whereas again with Phone Booth, I felt like part of it was padded just because I think the story could have easily been resolved quicker than it was. So in some ways, I feel like The Guilty actually felt shorter in that regard.
Well, that's a good point. Uh, we also should mention a few of the people who are in this. We already did with Ethan Hawke and Peter Sarsgaard, but there are voice cameos from Paul Dano and Bill Burr, which was like the only brief moment of levity in the film where Bill Burr's on the phone. I don't know how that could not be funny when Bill Burr's calling you from a club and basically gives up on you. Even the Dano part was kind of funny, with or I guess he wasn't the guy who had his computer stolen, but whoever that was, I don't remember who that caller was, but that shows you what Jake Gyllenhaal's dealing with like nitwits who are in town on business and decide to solicit a sex worker. So maybe there is a little bit more levity to it, that at least at the beginning. Then it just kind of fades away.
That's fair. Give a little credit, and luckily the prostitute who stole his phone wasn't screaming like the one Phone Booth. That would have been really bad. So
yeah, a little more courtesy given to the sex workers in this film than Phone Booth. But Nick Pizzolatto, probably 50 years younger than Larry Cohen. So there you go. Okay, with that, let's move on to talking about them in our head-to-head comparison. I'm kind of swaying on this one. What do you think it does a better job with its story effectiveness?
Well, I feel like I already gave this one away, but yeah, I do think that the Guilty is better in terms of story effectiveness because yeah, I get your point about the fact that you're seeing the action all around the person in the phone booth, and that is compelling. You're right in that regard. But I also feel like the action around him outside the phone booth is all pretty poorly acted. Like even Forrest
Yeah.
Whitaker, I don't think is that great in this. So I just feel like the dialogue readings were pretty clunky. So every time certain things happen, it would kind of pull me out a little bit. So I have to say that I think the story effectiveness for the Guilty was stronger, just because it yeah, it was definitely bleaker, but it was drawn out in a way that kept me kind of riveted to figure out what the hell was going on.
That's fair. Yeah. For me, I kept thinking about what both of these would look like on paper. You know, if I had the scripts that I read one after the other and how the stories unfolded and you know, performances aside, when I think of a story, I almost feel like they're a tie in a way because they're both really compelling stories. And when you think about them in script form, you're not seeing, you know, Colin Farrell's perspective or you're not seeing Jake Gyllenhaal's perspective. You're just reading out like what they are, and they both kind of are super interesting that way. So I don't know. This is a hard one for me to sort of determine. Um, I do think phone booth is like A to B. You know, there's no twist in it. There's no setup for a twist. There's no like getting to like pulling you in with one thing and then revealing something else. Uh, and I like that about this kind of story. So even though thinking about the Guilty on paper, for me, I'm gonna say phone booth with this, just because it's like point to point and is just sort of like a fun ride along the way. Now, when you get into the production of it, then it's gonna lose points for me. But just on paper, I like it as a straightforward script. So yeah, I'm gonna say phone booth on that one. Uh, we've kind of talked about this one already, but what about characters? Which one do you think has the better characters?
Uh, Um, yeah, I mean, the truth is, Guilty doesn't have a lot of characters, and you're right. The fact that a lot of it's done over the phone, where all the other characters are on the phone, they're not as well drawn, clearly. But yeah, but half the characters in Phone Booth are completely absurd and ridiculous. So
Yeah.
just by default, I have to go with the Guilty. I'm sorry, I have to.
Yeah, I thought you were going to talk yourself out of the Guilty for a minute there, and I was like, wait a minute. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I tried to, but I'm like, what the hell am I talking about? Like, those characters are ridiculous. So I can't do it.
yeah, I think script aside, like some of the line readings in the Guilty are not great, but I think the characters are interesting. And when I look at Phone Booth, and you know, we've talked about how the women are just completely mistreated in this film, whether they're non-existent or they're like too existed in a cartoonish way. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely points off for me with Phone Booth. I do think Colin Farrell's character is very like everything's out on the table with him, and I think he does a great job with it. That's more the acting than the character, but the Stu character I find kind of compelling. I also find him to be like a 2002 character, like a stereotype of what this agent might be, you know. And whereas Jake Gyllenhaal's character, though I don't love what he's the crime he's committed, like what that says about him, or sort of how he handles a lot of the way through the film, I do find him to be a really like sort of grounded and compelling character. And like I said, the people on the phone, even though I don't love their line readings a lot of the time, I do think that their characters are very interesting. I do think that collectively they all come together to tell a really interesting story with what they represent as characters. So big surprise to me. I was going into this thinking phone booth for characters, but I'm going to switch my vote and I'm going to say the guilty here, which is, this is why we do it. I love it. What about tone and consistency?
Well, that's this was harder.
You can never have a you can never have a consistent tone with Jake Gyllenhaal. Let's just say that.
That's fair, but the tone of the guilty is just pretty bleak.
Yeah.
So it is consistently bleak. I give him that, but
right.
But yeah, in terms of honestly, I feel like I'm gonna go tie on this one. I know that's a cop out, but I can't really choose which one I think has a better tone and consistency. I mean, because again, they're both very small, short movies told in an A to B manner, and they do a good job of keeping the suspense up throughout the movie. So I'm gonna go tie.
Yeah, that's not a cop out at all, because that was my choice when I was thinking about these and writing down what I was going to talk about. And you know, outside of that initial setup with Stu walking through Times Square, which is like chaos and very overwhelming, it's really just him in that booth, and he goes on a ride of starting out as Stu, the PR guy, to Stu, the husband, and finding humanity along the way. And
just to say, that is part of what I think works in that movie, that it starts off on Broadway. So you're getting this giant idea of the bigness of New York and all the stuff he's juggling. It's very fast paced, and you get this scope of the largeness of it. And then he steps over to 8th Avenue, which I forgot to mention. It's kind of fun to see New York in the early 2000s where there's still a little bit of seediness to it. So that's a fun throwback as well. But yeah, he steps on 8th Avenue where all of that stuff kind of stops and you're in a much smaller place to begin with. And then he gets in the phone booth and it shrinks even smaller. I like the juxtaposition of that to kind of show you that you're now in a completely different world than you were just a minute ago. So I think that actually worked really well in the movie. That you can't feel it, the claustrophobic nature of where he ends up if you don't get the largeness of where he was a minute ago.
Absolutely. It does a great job of providing contrast to show you isolation in the big city, which is hard to come by. I mean, you know, people are very individualized walking around, but to just be isolated like that in the middle of Manhattan is a great device that really sets up the film well. And you feel more and more isolated as he goes along, as he becomes more attached to this phone booth. So that's a great point, and it makes it really interesting. For tone and consistency, like I said, I'm going tie with this as well. I think that bleakness is always there in the guilty. To me, the guilty feels a little bit like a roller coaster ride where you're going up and up and up and up and up and up until you hit that reveal of the twist, and then you just like plummet. But I don't think that's like an inconsistent tone. I think that's, you know, like a steady ride. So I don't hold that against it. And yeah, because of that, I'm gonna go with a tie as well. Wow, we're really mostly seeing eye to eye on these, I guess. What about cultural staying power? Because I mean, with a COVID film, there's none basically, right? Except Tiger King, and that's not even around anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think that phone booth has much staying power either, as far as I know. I've never heard a single person talk to me about phone booth. So let's put it this way. I have never seen phone booth until just now, and it was not spoiled for me in any way.
Okay. Oh, wow, you'd never seen it before. That's interesting.
Never seen it before. So in more than 20 years since it came out, no one had ever mentioned to me what happened in that movie.
Yeah, I guess it's not like the cultural center of film. I did see it when it came out, and you know, I didn't like poll people on if they've seen Phone Booth or not for this, but I think when we get into the online polling results, we'll have a little bit of a better estimation of this. I do think, and this could just be for me, but I think of Phone Booth and I immediately see the poster, which is Colin Farrell's face on the left side with a bullet hole underneath it, and then everybody else sort of in the reflection of the phone booth on the right. But that, for whatever reason, that poster sticks with me, and because I've seen the film, I know what it is. I don't know that it really has like gifs or anything. I don't think anybody's memeing phone booth necessarily. So yeah, I guess it's not really there. The guilty, I just think it's in a memory hole, like nothing about it lingers as far as I can tell in the zeitgeist, or it's not referred to at all. So is it a tie for these two where they're both like just dead in the water?
Yeah,
In the
it's
culture?
probably a tie that neither one of them has had much of an impact on anything.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. It just seems like, again, I'm changing my mind here because I just envisioned phone booth as something everybody's seen, and maybe not necessarily talking about at parties, but like a reference that people could make that others would get. So yeah, so we part ways on story effectiveness, but we're the same everywhere else. So we'll bring it down to the polling at the end. But before we do that, let's talk about our 5 questions this week. Which film is more rewatchable to you?
Ooh. Uh, Phone booth. Because the
Yeah.
guilty, I said, because the guilty is kind of building up to a reveal. Once you get it, you're just stuck with a bleak ass movie, and I don't know how often you want to watch that. But phone booth, I mean, you could laugh at it. I mean, for on multiple rewatches, it actually probably becomes more fun the more you watch it because you can find even more things to pick apart. So I'm going phone booth.
Phone Booth feels very much like a TNT movie you'd see on the weekends, like Roadhouse or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, good call. I mean, he's definitely not Roadhouse.
Okay.
Let's not go crazy, but definitely, yeah.
Well, understood. Yeah, I mean, nothing is, but but you could see it in the presence of Roadhouse and the Shawshank Redemption, like
Sure.
always on TNT. Would you want to hang out with anybody from either of these films?
Not really, no.
Yeah, nobody. I can't. I couldn't do it. So, well, interesting. That was a quick one this
Maybe
week.
the cop
single
who's
person.
assisting the captain. I forget his name. He seems, like he knows what he's doing. He seems like a put together dude who can, who seems like a decent human being. Maybe that guy, but that's about it.
I wrote a note about that guy because every one of these kind of films that has a cop who's nuanced, who wants to assess the situation and figure out the best way to go forward with it, there's always an adversarial cop who wants to just bust in with like a bull in a china shop, and he's that guy. Like, this is procedure, this is what we do, enough of this like dilly-dallying, like let's just get this guy. There's always that guy, and he's
There's that guy.
that dude in this.
But then there's the other guy that's working with him, like his right hand man. That's what I'm talking about. Not
I
that.
thought you
not,
were talking
not
about that guy.
Not the guy who wants to just shoot him. Not that guy.
Okay.
Which,
okay.
by the way, even that was strange to me because they come in when he shows up, they're like very adversarial. They clearly don't like each other.
Yeah.
And then in a scene later on, he calls him captain. So I'm like, wait, so that guy's your subordinate, and you guys were talking in that way to each other? That made no sense.
Yeah.
Like that would not happen. I found that strange. Maybe that was just that threw me for a minute, but that's fine. Go ahead.
Well, there's always that one scene too where that crazy cop gets like glamored by the cop who's doing the nuanced work, and then he gets on board. So yeah, that's. But I remember now the man you're talking about who was his assistant. He seems pretty chill. So that's a good call. But other than him, yeah, nobody. Is this a career peak or valley for anybody involved?
No.
Kind of
Going
kind of a
going
last
hard
gasp
no.
for phone booths.
Yeah, it's a peak for phone booths because it's all downhill from there.
Yeah,
But no, not really.
that's
Not
about it.
really a peak or a valley for anybody. Again, that's why they're forgettable in a way. There's nothing in either that kind of everyone's done better work and more memorable work.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Steven Spielberg has to direct one of these. Which one is he taking?
This is the hardest question by far. I find this to be a really hard question. Because after Minority Report, I kind of feel like he could direct The Guilty. I feel like that could work. He could definitely do that. But I also think he could have possibly made Phone Booth a better movie.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I see him directing Phone Booth. I mean, he directed Colin Farrell in Minority Report maybe a year or two before this. So there's that relationship. I think because it's more outward and somewhat action oriented, that's like his wheelhouse. And I could almost see him doing like the technology thing at the beginning from the satellite down through the phone line and all that nonsense. But to me, that feels more like what I have come to know him to do than a guy on a phone, like reacting to things. That almost feels like it's too sort of interior for a very emotional director in Spielberg, who is like outwardly emotional in his characters and the things he does. Okay. Would either film be better if you swap lead actors? I find this very intriguing.
Yeah, that's a really intriguing question. I don't think. I don't know. I mean, I feel like Colin Farrell could probably be in The Guilty. I don't think that would be an issue. Um, and yeah, in some ways, the smarmy Jake Gyllenhaal could probably pull off Phone Booth. In a lot of ways. So I think it's almost a wash. Like, would it be better? I'm not sure it'd be better, but I actually do think you could swap lead actors without the product being diminished in some way.
Yeah. I think I can see Jake Gyllenhaal in Phone Booth because for him, as such a bombastic actor, seeing him reacting on screen to the things in his immediate vicinity could be compelling. I think Colin Farrell is a little more subdued, and that works in a call center situation where because those call center guys have to really stay steady on the phone. And I know that there are a lot of things working against Jake Gyllenhaal in his personal life going into this call. So that we see that on screen, but I think Colin Farrell's able to pull off that demeanor in a way that might elevate the film a little bit. I don't know. I could be wrong. My other question is these call center guys, 911 guys, do they need to have guns? Are they going out on a call at any point? Because he had a gun the whole time.
No. Well, I think it's because he's an ex-cop. I think that may be why. But if he was suspended, I don't know why he'd have one. But I think it has more to do with the fact that he's a cop than the fact that he's a call center person.
It just felt weird to see this guy answering a phone with like a holstered weapon. It's very strange.
It's definitely true.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it for our questions. Kind of fun answers this week. A lot to think about, actually. So, which is good. We're still on the fence about this. So let's talk about our online polling results. And again, as I always say, we're Movie Throwdown Pod on social media. Follow us, vote on these polls, and if you comment, we'll talk about you on the show. Where do you think it landed this week?
I have to say I have no idea. I don't know if anybody's heard of either of these movies. That's how I felt when I picked it. I really do not know. I have no feelings about it one way or the other.
Well, it was a shutout. With really? A score of 16-0, Phone Booth took the win this week, which surprised me.
Yeah. I know. Not one person thought The Guilty was. Wow. Okay. Color me surprised.
Again, I just think this this film is lost to time. You know, unless Netflix serves it up to you over and over again, I don't think anybody is going to watch it because they don't know about it. So, all right, what's your final verdict then for the week? We've gone through both films, had some great points about it. Where do you land in the end?
Just for
you
that
started
reason,
out with The Guilty.
And yeah, after 16-0, I'm still going with The Guilty because it's not like a shutout. Come on. Guilty is not a bad movie. I think it's definitely worth one watch.
But phone booth, no watches if you had to choose.
If I was going to pick for the first time to watch one, I think I would watch The Guilty. I still think that. It just works for me. Maybe I'm a depressed individual. I have no idea. Maybe I enjoy the bleakness. Who knows? But I feel like The Guilty resonated more with me than Phone Booth did.
I'm always surprised when we do a poll and the pre-internet films win. Like, I mean, this is kind of the beginning of the internet, but pre-social media, I guess I should say. And I guess that goes, well, it doesn't really go to show you that the cultural footprint because this doesn't really have one as far as we could tell. And yet it still took all of the votes in this, which is pretty wild. I mean, you would think something on Netflix would at least resonate with people on social media a little more. But again, the pandemic element of it maybe took it to where it ended up. For me, I enjoyed watching both of these films. But I think Phone Booth is the one I'm going to stick with because it was just more fun. It didn't have that bleakness, and it moved from A to B without the twist that it had to build up to. I like the idea of the action unfolding on screen instead of in my ears. Maybe that says more about me than the film itself, but I had to think a little less about it. I guess that's what it is. Like I could just watch it and point out the ridiculousness of it as it went along. So maybe that's it for me. So yeah, I'm going to go Phone Booth, which means we have a tie and we have to go to the internet to be the tiebreaker. They went Phone Booth. So It seems like Phone Booth is going to be our winner this week. Surprising, I have to say.
I'm surprised.
I did not expect it to go that way. But I did have a lot of fun watching The Guilty. Once I realized I had seen it before, it still felt new to me. And I because I'd forgotten all of it. And it was like a good first time watch for me.
Well, that right there is a bad sign, by the way, that you forgot that you had seen it. So I guess that says a lot right there.
Well, the COVID thing, I think that's just such a big part of it. I mean, I think there's some kind of like collective forgetting that happened during that time. I think our brains did something that in that moment, there are a lot of things I want to forget from that time and a lot of things that maybe I don't want to forget that I do forget. So I don't know. I think it's a cultural thing, but it could be Nick Pizzolatto too. I don't know.
It's possible.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening, everyone, or watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, next week is going to be a fun throwdown because it's 1999 Julia Roberts rom-coms. We're taking like a hard left turn. And Notting Hill is going to go up against Runaway Bride. And if you want to do a little bit of prep for that one, I recommend going back and listening to our Pretty Woman episode because Runaway Bride was kind of a highly anticipated reunion of Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to watching both of those this week. Again, follow us on social media. We're at Movie Throwdown Pod everywhere. Get some updates from us. Cast your votes. Tell us which film you think is better of Notting Hill and Runaway Bride. And let us know in the comments. Maybe we'll read them on the air. But do come back and join us next week for that. And until then, so long.